Today we're looking at the SaberTooth Nitro from Basher. It's sold by Hobby King. We're going to take it out of the box, put it together, run it in, and then we're going to take it to the sand. Careful, it's a jungle out there. Welcome back to Stupid Fast RC. Today we're unboxing the SaberTooth Nitro. Now this is pretty exciting because this is the first Nitro that I've unboxed on camera. This is its evil twin, the LiPo, and this is going to be controversial because we are going to be unboxing this and running it in this video, and then we're going to do another video where we compare the LiPo to the Nitro. Now, given that these are the exact same car, except for the fact that one's a LiPo and one's a Nitro, this will go some way towards fueling or extinguishing, we're not sure which, the argument of LiPo versus Nitro. Let's do it.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Okay, so I've got it out of the box, but before you start you're going to need a few things. This is not exactly an ideal thing for a beginner because it's an almost ready to run, so that means you're going to need to put a receiver in this little hole here. Batteries go in here, that's fair enough, that's no problem. And you're going to need a transmitter. And you'll see it's quite different from a LiPo or a electric car because obviously it has an engine. Now there are a lot of little complications that come with that. You're going to need some fuel. In the manual it's saying that we need 10 to 30% nitromethane. I generally go with 20. Look, there's a whole discussion on its own fuel, but let's just go with the manufacturer's spec. You're going to need some sort of fuel bottle, a spanner to take out the glow plug, and this little quick stop which you place in there if you want to stop the engine from running rather than push it. Because this has got a metal exhaust pipe, some of them have got rubber over the top. You could still put rubber on there if you wanted, and that's to stop the engine. You've either got to pinch this fuel line so that fuel stops going to the engine, or probably the cleanest way is to put a stop in the fuel into the exhaust pipe like that. If you get a kit from somewhere, it's fairly likely like that you'll get everything you need. Buy the fuel. You'll also need to buy a glow starter. I recommend that you get one that's got a gauge on the top. Now that tells you that your glow plug is making a circuit with the battery, and also that it's working properly and that your battery's got plenty of life. So that little gauge tells you quite a few things quite important. You're also going to need a spanner like this. It doesn't come with any spanners. The spanner for the wheels, that was the first thing I noticed was loose. It's important to go across the car with your spanners and just make sure that everything is tight before you start. And the wheels are probably the most important of all those things, because if the nuts spin free, then because it's a four-wheel drive, it will rip out the little squares in the back of the wheels, and that'll be the end of those wheels. You'll need to actually get new rims then. So I'm going to go ahead now, put the rest of it together. One other quick tip that's important. The body has got a layer of plastic on. If you watched our video about painting your body, you'll see that the paint goes on the inside in these things, and when they paint them, there's still a layer of plastic on the outside. So you'll need to remove that layer of plastic before you put your stickers on. If you make the mistake of putting the stickers onto the plastic, then they're just going to peel away when this plastic starts to come loose. And that may come away as soon as you put fuel in the car. All these plastics are fuel proof, and that probably is not. Anyway, you'll need to put the stickers on. We'll put the receiver and transmitter in, and then we'll go through how to run in the engine. The instructions are actually in the manual, so and I've actually done separate videos on run-in. There's a couple of fairly good ones on the net. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I am going to show you briefly how to start this. This is a pull start. We'll get the fuel in, we'll get it running, and the run-in procedure is quite long. You have to run several tanks of fuels through it. We should also have a temperature gauge to monitor the temperature of the cylinder head when it's running, so that we make sure it doesn't overheat. So far all I've done is put a little receiver in there and whack the batteries in there. We're just going to give it a quick test. Oh, that's good, we've started. Notice I've got this up on a block. I'm not starting this yet because it's a nitro. This is not going to be a problem for turning the power on the transmitter after the car, but normally you've got to do that. Just going to do a bit of a range check. That's full throttle, and we can see right in the middle there that the throttle looks like it's coming out all the way. There you go. Now see that? It's got to open the whole way, and it's also got to close as well. So that's not quite closing. So I'm going to have to trim back the throttle. There you go. So it closes the whole way. So at rest, that's got to be closed. And at full throttle, it's got to be open. If you can't quite see it, when you actually use your model, you'll see it. Just a little bit of slack there on the end of that push rod. And then conversely, when we hit the brakes, we need to be able to turn that cog. We need to be able to not be able to turn the wheel here. So when I hit the brake, and I'm not going to be able to do two things at once here, but I can turn this cog now. When I hit the brake like that, I shouldn't be able to turn the cog with my finger. So that means the brakes are working. And the brake, we need this gap here. If that gap there isn't there when we start, that means the brakes are on all the time, and they're going to smoke up real quick and they're going to destroy your brakes before you know it. That's not going to make you happy, and there'll be smoke and bad stuff. Yeah, okay. I'm also going to put a little bit of air cleaner oil on this air cleaner. I noticed that it is clean as a whistle. We would normally put a few drops of special oil on the inner filter. Well, by special oil I mean air filter oil. The outer filter traps the big bits of dirt, the inner filter is going to trap the smaller pieces of dirt, and the smaller pieces of dirt get stuck to air cleaner oil, and that's generally how these filters work. Okay, to put the oil in the air filter, I've got this oil which is blue, mainly I guess so that you can see it through the filter. This is a white filter. You can put roughly 10 drops. I kind of just zigzag it through like this, and then to save your fingers, you put it in a plastic bag and just kind of squish it through the filter, and you can see when it's spread evenly through the filter because the filter's blue. Now I'm going to need a little bit more oil. I think I've exceeded my 10 drops by a lot, but anyway, hopefully it'll keep the sand out of a brand new engine. You don't want to put too much in. The reason is because you want as much airflow getting into the engine as efficiently as possible, and of course the best way to do that is not clog it up with oil. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and it'll spread out a little bit on its own as well. We'll put it all back together, lid back on the oil. You want to do this in a clean environment. You don't want sand blowing around behind you. So the outer filter, look, still no oil on it, right? So oil on this one, not on that one. I'm just going to place that back on the engine, and I think that that is the end of the prep. I'll place it back on with a zip tie, right? You're going to need a zip tie. You take this off, you're going to need a zip tie to put it back on. So there are, besides some of the things I talked to you about before, there are a few things you are going to need, right? Now, one of the other things I'm going to do here is just put a bit of WD-40 lubricant in the engine before I start. I've taken the glow plug out. You're going to need a spanner like that to do it. Couple of reasons for doing this. I just want to make sure that it's lubricated properly everywhere inside before I start. And of course, one of the things we're going to be doing is running it in at idle. And we want a bit of lubrication inside. Now, I did that to get the excess oil out, or WD-40, it's not oil, it's flammable. So this car can actually start on this stuff, and it will, and it'll give us a bit of a head start because I actually need to get fuel through all this hose and pipe, and I'll show you that in a sec. Okay, now I filled the tank with fuel. I actually bought brand new fuel today. I've got 20% nitro fuel here. I've got a litre, probably expecting to run up to 5 tanks of fuel to run the car in. And sometimes some people recommend that you run a whole litre through. The first tank is going to go through without the car actually being driven. It's going to run idle here. Now there's a lot of different recommendations from manufacturers as to how the engine should be run in, and you should actually read those. I've got a temp gauge. One of the things they say here is not to go over 200 degrees, and that's important because you don't want the engine to overheat. The way to measure the temp is you get the temp gauge, you place it in there, you press the button and it gives you a reading. It's at 27.1 now because that's room temp, right? So temperature, you don't want it to be revving too hard to begin with. You're going to need a screwdriver to adjust this needle valve here because you don't want it to run too lean. If it runs too lean, that means that the cylinder's not being lubricated and it could seize up. So when you're wearing these things in, these parts haven't been sitting together or being wearing together yet, and that's what the run-in process does. Any slight differences between the piston and the cylinder head, we're going to wear those in now. We can't do that at full speed, we can't do that under load. So I've got my igniter, which I'm going to place in here now. I'm in the green here, it says we're running. I've obviously got to turn the transmitter and receiver on, which would be a good idea. Might move this fuel. And let's see, oh, okay, I am going to have to, now these empty hoses, I need to actually pull the exhaust hose off and just pressurize the tank to blow fuel just up to the needle valve here. You don't suck it back into your mouth, you don't want it in your mouth, blow it out, right? You could hold your finger over there and pull the starter, that's going to take you a while. If you've got a rotor start, it's going to be much more, I actually prefer rotor starts to pull starts, but anyway, that's a whole other story. Let's see what this does. Alright, well that's not bad for a first try. What I've done there is blown about 3 centimeters of fuel into the carburetor. I saw a bubble go past, that's how I know it was 3 centimeters. I'm just going to reprime that CRC in. By doing that, I know that there's just the right amount of fuel out. It'll blow the excess out. Because I've put fuel in there, there'll be enough fuel in there to give it a little run. I probably wouldn't do this on an engine that was already run in, but since this is the first time, I'm just making sure that everything's kind of right. Now I've run 1 tank of fuel through it. One thing I forgot to tell you is that if you're in a particularly cold climate, you can preheat the engine a little bit with a hairdryer. This is not a hairdryer, it's a paint stripping gun, so totally different. But you must be very careful not to melt anything that's plastic, and just heat the head and maybe the block a little bit. But if you can increase the temperature, say, 20, 30 degrees maybe, that's really going to help you start it, especially if you're in some sort of sub-zero conditions. Or even just, this here, this is at 38. If I can get this around 45, I'm going to be at a distinct advantage when I go to start it. Yeah, I got it up to 49 degrees.
On this next tank, we're actually going to put it on the road. Now, I've been turning the needle valve, the large one, 1/4 of a turn in each time. So I'm actually making the fuel mixture a little bit leaner, running it out so that there's not as much oil and fuel going into that cylinder head, and allowing that engine to go a little bit faster each time. That's important because now, as it wears in, we're actually going to tune this thing so we can actually drive it. And that's obviously where we're aiming to go. We want to get this machine up to full revs. This thing is designed to do 12,000 or so revs when it's actually working properly. Now we don't want to wind it too far in, and we need to be able to see smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. That's a good indicator that there is enough fuel getting in. Now, one of the ways that you can tell if you've gone too far is if you accelerate and instead of it getting a nice crisp line away from the start, it hesitates and it kind of goes and it doesn't take off nice and smoothly. That means that, and then after it does that, it does take off. Now, that means that it's too lean. You can't run it too lean, it will seize up. You're actually better off running it a bit rich, especially in the beginning. In the first few tanks, certainly in the first litre or so, I wouldn't tune it right in all the way. Once you've had a fair bit of fuel through it, that's fine. Run it out, but you don't ever want to run it too lean. It's better to err on the side of the thing running slower than it should than leaning it out and having it seize up, especially if you're just bashing. If you were racing, well, that's a whole different thing. You're going to risk it and whatever. But if you're bashing, you certainly don't want to ruin your engine by leaning it out. Now, if you think this has taken a long time to do, in real time, this has taken me about 2.5 hours. So, and I had over an hour of footage on this stuff. So this has been shrunk down quite a bit in video time, but this is going to take you a lot. This is a long process. It has to be done. It's worth doing. It has to be done properly. I can tell you from personal experience that there is a difference between an engine that's been run in properly and an engine that's just been belted together. An engine that's been running properly will start nicely. It will run better. And I've had identical engines where I've actually had this happen, and this is why I spend the time, and this is why I'm showing you this video. It's really important to take the time, do it right, run the fuel through. By the time we hit the sand in a minute, we'll have run almost a full litre of fuel through this engine. 750 mils I think will have gone through by the time we leave the grassed area here.
Okay, I thought it was awesome, really fast in the dunes. We got some cool tricks out of it. It just whips up the sand. It looks absolutely incredible. It's not going to win the fashion competition now because look at it. Okay, Bailey, now what did you think about it?
Yeah, it was really good. I liked how it went up the dunes and did lots of cool jumps. It really ripped up the sand and it looks really cool.
Okay, now leave your comments below on what you thought about it and leave a like. And see you next time with Stupid Fast RC.
So this is definitely the longest video we've ever done on Stupid Fast RC. If you're still here, then there is something definitely wrong with you. Anyway, if you've run in your car and it doesn't look like this, you're doing it absolutely wrong and you need to start again. So go back to the beginning of the video and start from scratch. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
Move together.
Yep.
Back where you were, back standing where you were. You're moving all over the place, guys. Okay. Stand still, look into the camera bales, yeah?
Yep.
Actually, go that way a little bit because you got shadows inside it there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, back towards me a bit. Alright, that'll do. Okay, so say next time, tell us what we're going to do.
Okay.
Go.
Next time we're going to do a grudge match between the Nitro and the Lipo. We're going to do a fashion parade, a speed contest, well maybe, a mid-air smackdown, tug of war, and a race course. It's going to be awesome. And now stay tuned to see the next video, and hope you like it. Leave your comments below of what you thought about the SaberTooth Nitro. Now see you next time on Stupid Fast RC.